ask a child what they want to be when they grow up, 60% of them don't say, I want to be emotionally disengaged from my work. And 19% of them don't say, I want to be miserable in the workplace. And they don't say, I want to find a job that causes me so much stress that it will impact the way I behave with my loved ones. But the fact is that this is our current work situation, where 80% of people are not really engaged with their work, and 70% of people are not really engaged with their lives. Now, for the human in me, this breaks my heart. And for the business person in me, this indicates an enormous loss of opportunity due to this correlation between engagement and performance. But more importantly, do any of us really want to live like this? I mean, do you want to have a life that you're not fully engaged with? This is a serious question. We have this one life, and 70% of us are disengaged from it. What is the point? So disengagement costs our global economy $7.8 trillion a year. And we're spending billions of dollars, a little bit more difficult to measure, but billions of dollars on mitigating this. Yet we're making very slow progress if we look at our engagement scores over the last few decades. We're also making curiously slow progress when it comes to really driving diversity and inclusion in our workplaces. And also that authentic tolerance, as well as building psychological safety as a priority within our workforce. This can also be said beyond the realm of the workplace when we talk about global warming and sustainability, when we talk about addiction or domestic violence and the mental health crisis. So there seems to be something missing here between what Greta Thunberg refers to as the blah, 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 the no action, and the creating actual change. And I believe that this is conscious connections. Because conscious awareness is the reawakening of the humanity in each of us, to care about the impact that we have. It's the becoming present in the moment, practicing self-love and self-care, so that we can start to open up, to build these deeper connections, to create this sense of belonging, the joy, the compassion, the trust, and the love that we all crave as human beings. Now, let's reflect a little bit on our current work situations. Obviously, as human beings, we were created to live in nature, right? And I think we could all agree that we prefer to live in a house versus in the forest, for obvious reasons, like safety and comfort. But we also mustn't forget, or we must be careful how far away from our natural state we actually get. Because if we lose completely that connection between how we were meant to live and work and be, then it becomes challenging, right? So our work environments, like these poor chaps here, sitting in front of computer screens for long periods of time, 1 hour lunch break that we often don't have time to take, the high pressures, the lack of appreciation, the lack of reward, waiting for that 4-week vacation annually that many of us can't even afford to take. So maybe think about your own peer group, like how many of your friends or coworkers are super passionate about what they do? How many of them are excited about Monday morning when it comes around? And how many of them speak passionately about their work? And what about in life? How many of your friends are fully engaged with what they're doing in life, are fully embracing and living their best life? We know that divorce rates are still high. There's another big chunk living in unhappy marriages or challenging family situations. There's lots of different stressors and different things that are impacting our ability to live full and happy lives. And we know that loneliness is rising. We also know that loneliness is actually more threatening to our well-being and our health than smoking. And we know that social connection can actually drive both longevity and happiness. And this doesn't necessarily have to be those deep, sort of long-term relationships that we have with our friends, family, etc. It can even be superficial, but meaningful, heartfelt connections with strangers. We also know that employees who have a friend at work are more likely to be engaged. So what's going on here? We're sort of losing our connection and replacing it with efficiency. Have we become so busy doing that we no longer have time to connect? Have we filled our diaries with so many meetings and so many things to do that we no longer have time to ask how someone's weekend was? Like, who here has been to a business meeting where this sort of social small talk has been seen as a waste of time? I know that I have, yeah. See a few hands coming up. And it really isn't a waste of time. It really is not. Because social connection is an essential part for humans to thrive. So I believe that love and compassion are missing from many of our corporate cultures. And I believe that it's having an impact in all throughout our lives, both at work and at home. Now, this used to be a conversation reserved for the yoga studio or the weekend retreat, right? But research has shown us the importance of bringing this into our boardrooms because of the correlation, right, with driving performance and productivity. Because consciously led organizations make better, more sustainable decisions. They are more connected to their stakeholders and their clients. They have lower employee turnover, higher productivity, they're more agile and resilient, and therefore able to really thrive, and all this without sacrificing their bottom line. So could a focus on conscious connections help us to drive more engagement while still driving the financial performance? And I believe that it can. And I believe that they're all interlinked, connected, and correlated. Now, I've had some amazing leaders in my life, but I've also been on the receiving end of unconscious, uninspiring leadership. And I've also been on the giving end of it. I used to work in the wellness industry. So I used to run spa and wellness centers around the world. Very relaxing place, right? But I was so bad at managing my own stress that I would consistently fail to connect with my team members, particularly the team members that were not fully engaged. And the problem is that, you know, I was working 60-hour weeks, very focused on the bottom line and performance. I was skipping lunch or having lunch at 4 o'clock. Sleep was an afterthought. And because I was like, I'm getting away with this, fine, I can get away with it. Apart from that time when I got shingles at the age of 35, so probably I wasn't really getting away with it, right? And this is just the thing. We think that we can pull it off, but the fact is that when we're depleted due to stress and overwhelm, we simply don't perform well. It affects us physically, but it also affects our cognitive function. It affects our decision-making, our focus, our attention, our memory, and it also affects our emotion regulation. So this really impacts us, of course, but it really affects the way that we connect with others, the way we build and maintain relationships. So it's really an essential part of being a conscious leader. Now, the best part of my experience with unconscious leaders and my own leadership shortcomings is that it led me to the second chapter of my career. And I now spend my time supporting teams and leaders and getting to that place of higher productivity on the basis of forming more conscious, stronger connections, mitigating stress, and reducing resentment and driving brain function and compassion along the way. And even though I've spent the better part of the last decade focusing on this topic, there really isn't sort of a silver bullet or an easy fix. Because, of course, we know humans are quite complex and there's lots of variables. But one thing that we do know is that it doesn't simply boil down to having a good manager, although it is an essential component. But we also need conscious individuals to be open and responsive, because even the best, most consciously connected leader cannot turn everyone around if they're not willing to go there. So in order to create conscious systems, we need everybody to be on the same page, or at least striving for being open and receptive to this. So we've been told that employees don't leave organizations, but they leave bad managers. And while that's definitely true, an unconscious, negative, stressed, bad manager will definitely impact their team, and definitely not in a positive way. But when we measure employee engagement and we blame the outcome on bad leaders, is it possible that we're just amplifying the problem? Because if you instill blame and shame on an already stressed leader who is performing in bad leadership ways, you will only make it worse, because it will increase the stress and it will increase the disengagement. So is it possible that when it comes to measuring engagement, we're sort of looking at this vicious cycle of fear and shame leads to more stress, more stressed out leaders, leads to more stressed out teams, leads to all different levels of disengagement throughout our organizations? And is it possible that we instead need to focus on developing these skills for the leaders? Because it's not something that we learn at business school, although it should be, and it's not something that we learn in most leadership development programs, although it should be. And I want to add as well, actually, that I believe that bad leaders are also good people, but who themselves have become disengaged and disconnected. So we need to help them to come back to being, more engaged and more connected. And then they too can become good leaders. So if we want to change our work environments, if we want to become the leaders that we want to work for, we have to start with we have to change what we put into it. So I have to change what I put into it, and you have to change what you put into it. Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror, for like longer than necessary, that sort of awkward stare at yourself? Has anyone tried this? Oh, a couple of people? Okay, great. Fantastic. Well, maybe tonight, after you finish brushing your teeth, have a really good look at yourself in the mirror. Because everything that comes at you in the world is right there in that mirror. Because our relationship with ourselves is the basis of how we interact with the world. So if we want to make a conscious shift, we have to become more self-aware. We have to understand more about ourselves, our strengths, our values. We have to focus on our mindset. Because when we have a negative mindset, negative self-talk, negative thoughts, there's no way that we can show up authentically with positive energy to give. And at some hotels, we have the sign, smile, you're on stage at the employee entrance, at the staff entrance, all with the very best intention. And of course, sometimes a great reminder, right? Because we can all put on a show. But the thing is here that energy can't be faked, because we can feel it. You've all sensed another person's energy, right? And when it's inauthentic, it just doesn't resonate, doesn't sit well. So we have to also learn how to manage our energy. And this involves, getting enough sleep, taking care of yourself, getting enough water and eating well, but also doing things that you enjoy, socializing with friends, having fun, anything that fills you up. Because as they say, you can't pour from an empty cup. So start to become a bit more conscious about the energy that you bring. Did I have a positive, a neutral, or a negative impact there? Or before you go into an interaction, what is the energy that I want to bring here? Am I in a position to bring it? Or do I need to postpone this talk to another time when I'm more rested and I feel more balanced, etc.? Just become conscious of it. And the other thing, which is really powerful, is to ignite our generosity of spirit, where we can truly see the person that's standing in front of us, whether it's a teammate or a loved one or a stranger, that daring to see ourselves in others. This brings me to a story of when I was here in Switzerland, actually, a few years back. And I was doing an internship in Geneva. And on my way home from work one day, I was running a few errands downtown. And I just parked my car and I headed up the escalator. And I saw this woman, very elegant and beautifully put together. And she just looked so radiant. I smiled at her. And she looked at me and she smiled back. And then she said, "Thank you for your smile, miss." And I said, "Mais de rien," for nothing, because it really takes nothing to connect with someone, to share, to experience the beauty of the other person's existence for that brief moment. We can, of course, continue to live in this disengagement for a long time to come. We've been doing it for generations. We can continue to do it for a long time. But isn't it on some level rather tragic that we are losing out on the opportunity to be and experience so much more from this life? So what will happen to all these different segments if we can become more consciously connected? How will it transform? So if we can spend a little bit more time connecting with ourselves, connecting consciously with other people, is it possible that we can drive love and compassion into our organizations to drive productivity, creativity, and financial results while creating lives well lived? Is it possible? Thank you.